Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Line of Duty reviews. It feels like a long time since I've said that.
Yeah, see, it seems like 1,000 years ago, and what has happened to basically since and since then. If an if an other a show that everybody talks that everybody talks about and stuff, but I see said that I can and oh Jay are already in the chat, so I hope you guys are I hope you guys are okay and enjoying your Friday night. So Charlotte, what are you in a show what's on this episode?
I think this felt like definitely a different type of finale. Like they've all
Yeah,
felt a bit different, but this one really felt like a different pace and style. But I actually quite like that watching it again, and I actually think the so-called sort of confession and the coming clean moment
yeah,
was more emotional this time, and it felt more human almost with Bent Copper, because we always get it at this point in the series, and
yeah.
hers felt just a little bit more emotional.
I think there was a few that were a bit dodgy in this episode, but we'll get to the so yeah, in terms of my initial thoughts was obviously Balak Avaman was addressed, but it actually it turned out to be an on event because if you really think of it though, that was actually he's shown up in episode 3 as well. If obviously then him in the phone can X phone, so that was pretty much s- on up earlier on the series, so that was a bit fun on the end, the one that side of things, but in terms of the actual episode as a whole, it served as almost it served as almost to the sort of goal, basically. It's okay, and all the pieces together because everything's starting to fall into place in terms of the overall picture.
Yeah, it's very much. I think at this point the show has gone from a very singular focus in series one to now it's very much addressing
Yeah,
this idea of that there's a bad apple, but they're just part of the sort of whole web, and this idea of these really
yeah,
big sort of complex webs, which was just starting now. I think definitely in
yeah,
this episode, but maybe in a couple before this, to
mhm,
understand that you don't really get lone agents in the show.
yeah,
Everything connects back in a sense, and sort of characters that have had a big presence for a while sort of got revealed in certain ways, and certain things came to the surface which once you really thought about it, yeah, you sort of went, yeah, there was clues and there were things sort of hinting at this, and it was just a final confirmation. I felt like a bit in this episode for a few things.
yeah,
So we start off as those are sort of our round thoughts. And obviously, as usual in the chat, we'll read out whatever you say if it's a point, or we like to have
Yeah.
interaction. So keep them coming.
Or if it's Matthew,
Well, he's
he
not
can
turned up yet, so we'll see.
or if it's Matthew, he can pass out a certain characters. He'll kind of try and read as many amount as possible.
No. Daniel will try and read them out through nearly wetting himself laughing. Is what usually happens, and I have to read them out. When Matthew comes, we'll know. We'll know because Daniel will probably be laughing.
I'm surprised he hasn't got us kicked off the air yet with some of them.
Oh, it's his little mini aim. It's his little mini aim in life. So we sort of start off with a bit of the consequences of Roz's actions last episode with the Nick situation, which is because their house is being searched. They're in like a hotel, and it's a
I was kind of going to ask, is that a hotel or a B&B? Because
I think it's a hotel. It looks a bit too posh for a B&B.
Yeah, is it does kind of look a bit sort of ungly to me.
It to me looks a bit big to be a B&B. I could be wrong, but I'm sure. I think I overheard hotel when they were coming into their rooms. But what's interesting about this is you're seeing the effects on the children now, and the fact that they sort of want nothing to do with her, and they're almost sensing. It feels like there's something going on here with you and Dad. Like there's something more. Oh, if only Wendy went. If only. I suppose so. When we get to the end, that might be not a bad comment. So yeah, I just think that's a nice little scene just to set up that there are now consequences a lot. Yeah, Sudoku, I think she really did by the end, and that's why I'm going to be a lot of praise when we get to that bit.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, this is important because I think this whole theme of the kids is what plays into why she does what she does at the end of the episode.
Even though the kids actually hate her in scenes.
Well, that's the point. That's what I'm saying. It's showing that something that probably started off. She thought, oh, it'd be quick. It will save my bacon, and then I'll go back to normal. It's like, no, what you've done to Nick, you can't really go back from at this point, and it only gets for him. So now, and I think this is a little thing, but it's important for what happens. We now see that because of Hastings getting the reg, I think it is, and Hilton's involvement, Murder Squad, which is, if people remember, he's got Steve's ex-girlfriend, which comes into play, and one of Daniel's favourite characters. I can't think of his name. I always blank on the fella's name.
Oh, is it? Oh,
with the glasses.
Hargreaves or whatever they say.
And another important figure, AC9's taking over, and this is where we see Jamie has ended up. From him getting, well, not sacked, but getting told basically go away. So he's ended up in AC9, and now they're all investigating the Roz case. So it's not AC12 officially.
Yeah, it's because Hastings has been after the egg and 15, so it's kind of like other skill ought to have picked up the soul accident. It's basic.
Yeah, and like I said, I think this is important because you've got certain personalities now being involved who have got a lot of history with a lot of other characters.
And speak of the
here we go.
Everyone will show up here.
We were missing you, Matthew. So yeah, like I said, that's a little scene, but it's important for what happens later. And then we actually get Murder Squad. So Sam, I think, is leading it, interviewing Nick, and you sort of see bits and bobs of the evidence and what he's saying and how it's sort of panning out for him, I would argue.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I sort of got jotted down, which wasn't new information, because once again, there's a little bit of that in this episode of stuff we know, but it's new people, so they have to repeat the same information, which is basically this affair that Nick thought Ross was having with Tim. There's no evidence supporting it. So it just makes his claims and reason for being there even more murky and sort of even more, why did you really go sort of vibe, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it sort of just adds to the unreliability of Nick.
But at this point as well, the jumper that Ross has managed to.
Oh, that comes up later.
Oh yeah.
But we know that she did that last episode, so you probably guessed it was going to come up, and it does in quite a significant way. So this is when I quite like this little scene, because you see Sam basically, Steve and the team get told Murder Squad's on it now, and so they go and talk to them to try and get information. And this is when Sam sees Steve, I think, for the first time since the accident, since the attack. So she sees him in his chair. And I thought that was a nice little bit of acting from the actress, actually.
Yeah.
That you could see she was a bit taken back to see Steve like that.
Although it did kind of make me chuckle because of how awkward it was.
That was the whole point, though. It was this sort of awkward, like, oh, I dumped you, and now I feel really bad. And then, and also, I love how Kate sort of had just the sort of dagger in more when she was like, "Oh, you dumped him at the first chance." So it was a nice little moment of her sticking up for Steve.
I mean, because usually she's basically sort of, usually she's sort of snappy at him, but now she's fully in Steve's on her.
Yeah, and that's what I love. That's what I quite love, the dynamic. That in one moment they can be quite coarse, these two, and they can be a bit like cat and dog. But when they need to, they like Steve did it for Kate with the whole cheating thing a couple series ago, and he was like, "Yeah, I've got your back." And it's nice to see Kate do the same here. And I'm blanking on Kate's actress, which is terrible.
Kim Kill.
Yeah, sorry. And Vicky did Catty very well. I just thought it was lovely. She just did that sort of as a female, and Wendy will probably agree with me. You can sense cattiness, and it was quite a fun little catty scene. But
I kind of get Charlotte vibes, and that's
from who? From who?
Well, from Kate.
You make me out to be the loveliest person.
It's true.
But the sort of the more plot relevance of this is that, and I think it's out of like feeling sorry for Steve and a bit guilty, Sam basically gives him the interview, the sort of recorded interview that they've done of Nick, which they sort of for the rest of the episode pick through.
Yeah.
Oh, hi Sean, nice to see you. And you've just come at a good point. Where I think I
Yeah.
scared Daniel.
Again.
Again. It's a general occurrence. So, like I said, this is when they're starting to look at the interview and pick it apart. And you see that this minicab thing comes up, which is Nick saying he thought Roz went and got a minicab. And also that corresponds to what the witnesses saw with his car, thinking it was a minicab. And
Yeah.
they basically, with the witnesses, and what Nick repeats is this figure going out and coming back, which is what we know is Tim. And this
Yep.
sort of him going out to the shops, and Nick describes like a tube thing. So you know he's talking about Tim, and this is sort of all, like you said, a lot of little bits coming together now, and lots of pieces of the puzzle sort of slowly slotting together. And then Steve sort of has, after they've been doing this all night, Steve has one of his sort of, oh, I thought of something moments. And he talks about how there was a missing bit of evidence, this tracksuit, that was never found at the scene. And that somehow the murderer would have to get this tracksuit out, and it would be covered.
Yeah.
Oh, have good fun. I hope you had a good time at the pub, Sean, then. And nice to have you where we can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Steve basically is talking about this tracksuit, and that it would be covered in evidence, and how if they can basically get this tracksuit, they think they've got their murderer. And he sort of brings up how Roz's background would let her sort of have preemptive knowledge of all the mistakes a criminal would do.
See, Sadako, you say I do say, but I say it was more sort of calculated.
I think Tim's, I would argue sometimes Tim's cockiness, him thinking he was smart, like thinking he's like above people almost,
Yeah.
made him make some silly mistakes. But I do agree. I think some of it was a bit ridiculous by the end. But it's like it's one of the gripes I do have with the season, but it's not a massive one.
How did
What?
have you on the chat and a chat about Pringle?
Oh yes, of course. So, and here's me trying to remember like all the little bits of dialogue and all the stuff that's important has been said. So Steve says basically with Roz's background, she would know that evidence would have to get out and not be, and she'd probably hold on to it, is what they all sort of come to, isn't it? That if it was her, this tracksuit would have been stored and held until she could later on dump it. Because she knows in that 24-hour period they were talking about is where the most type mistakes are made.
Yeah.
So, and this is what I do like, that like they are really taking into account of her police background and how that would sort of dictate her actions almost, and they're doing that to predict how she would act, which I think is what does make this show unique. That if it was any other show, you wouldn't have that, because it's not police you're talking about, it's normal people. So you sort of have that added extra thing of, no, they're trying to catch coppers here, so there would be different methods and different ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And now we get to Hilton, which is what we all predicted he was going to do to Roz.
Yeah, basically always but in the book.
Yeah. And he sort of says, oh, you've done really well, but you have to resign.
Yeah, but it's a sort of patronizing and condescending every offered me Ichigo and Ichigo or you're just that and you're just a kid. He's
Yeah, if
just
you
on
didn't
that.
like Hilton before this series, I've got a feeling you pretty much hated him by the end of it. But it's a good moment for Rose's character because you could see she really thought he was going to back her, and he really thought he was going to fight, and he's just like giving up on her, and in a sense, and you can see that in Rose's face. It's sort of like oh God, like I'm really by myself now, and I've done all this stuff, and I've made all these mistakes.
Yeah.
And now this is a pretty big one because there's lots of like repercussions, which is in the Nick interview. He brings up when he first saw Roz with the cut on her arm.
Yeah, and they wasn't to match up as to the day that she is.
Yeah, and it wasn't that. It was basically, if I understood right, it was the day after the attack. He noticed
Yeah,
it on her arm. So obviously, AC hear that and are like, why would she have a cut
yeah.
if she didn't have something to do with Tim? So that's just like, and then they find out that Roz has got MRSA, if I've got the letters right, because Tim had it. So they
Yeah.
sort of are like, right, in her, like, in the cut, when it was getting treated, they found it in the hospital. So she's got that off somebody. Like, and then they sort of don't know at this point it's Tim, but it's a good educated guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's fibers. And then they, like I said, this is a few different things. They all come off that this idea that yes, Tim's body they couldn't get anything off because it's been so many weeks, but there's fibers on like the balaclava and the stuff he wore, which could link him to having this condition, which would then link him to Roz. So it's sort of a very around the houses type of method, but it would be that crucial link
Yeah.
that they've been in contact enough with each other at least. That sort of would completely blow her alibi out, which is I didn't have anything to do with him. And it's sort of like, no, we've got pretty good evidence that you at least had close contact with this guy.
Oh my God, Matthew's tongue and then to talk.
I don't want to know where you've learnt that, Matthew. I really don't.
Oh yeah.
So, as I sort of now call her Roz's little sort of rat, Jodie,
Yeah.
comes back. And she's been doing more snooping, hasn't she, for her? And she sort of tells her, yeah, they've been looking at Tim's flat at now AC12. So
Yeah.
what's he said now?
It's just the it's just the chat some reaction, but yeah, um, but yeah, Jodie gets a bit more annoying and a bit overbearing in the episode. A bit, I do agree with when oh, it,
I think at this point it just comes across as, yeah, it's normal in a job. You might do a favour for your boss, but it's
yeah,
now
but you,
becoming a bit over the top sort of
yeah,
favours.
yeah, yeah, and us to me, yeah, does get a bit annoying though, so I do agree. Yeah.
But you don't see too much of her, and she does actually find something out that is a major reveal near the end, I suppose. So she does a job because sort of at the end of this conversation, Roz basically says, I want you to do some telecom analyzing, and we don't know quite yet what that is, but you sort of, if you've watched this show for long enough, you're like, that's going to come up later. And it does,
Yeah.
but right near the end.
Sean, do I give you Yaran Oyen that will move swift to you and
Wrestling
yeah.
talk, folks. For the rest of us, we don't have a clue. Is my guess. Yeah, I'm the same to Ducky. I don't really dislike her. I just don't like her. She's sort of just she's there to be the little, like I said, rat, the little sort of information gatherer.
Yeah, but it's so like she's not getting a backbone. You so every time Oz actually needs somebody to do a he here comes to would
Oh yeah, that's
do
her
that.
role.
Mm-hmm,
Like I'm not denying that. So
mm-hmm.
now we get the jumper come up because Roz suddenly remembers something because she knows AC-12's on her trail, I suspect. And she goes to Murder Squad and tells them, "Oh, well, yeah, I did see something odd that Nick like had this navy jumper that he took from the wash." So it's pretty easy to guess, like, oh, so he's putting something in the wash. That might be suspicious at all.
Yeah.
Oh, and Sean, no, he knows my interest is nowhere near wrestling. Why do you think I wanted him to do streams with you? Because I was like, cannot talk about that and have no interest in it. So you're his little wrestling buddy. That
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Yeah, and then so the sort of MRSA, God, I can't say that, comes back up and they get the match, which is what they were suspecting they'd get with Tim and Ross.
Because as soon as it gets into instantly contaminates it basically.
Yeah. So you sort of you sort of for all the sort of ups and downs of they thought they got her, then they didn't. I think now I don't know if you felt it. You sort of get this feeling of yeah, the net's really closing on her now. Like she can't lie herself out of this one. She can't put somebody else like in the way to distract. This is pretty solid and it's sort of bang to rights almost at this point.
Yeah.
So the murder squad find the jumper because Roz has basically pointed them towards it. And as you said, we know she's put evidence on that from Tim's flat, so we know it's going to make Nick look guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sort of get the start of a thing that AC-12 is doing for a little bit of the episode, which is tracking Roz's car and sort of trying to find where she could have dropped off this tracksuit.
Yeah.
And sort of trying to narrow down her movements a bit, aren't they, by looking at the cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nick, with the new evidence and sort of with how he's been in the interview, they charge him with the murder and also the kidnapping of the girl. So he's not just going down for one thing. Oh yeah, I love my Witcher, but I don't know if Daniel's ever going to get into that. Sean, I've got him into one of the actresses. If that counts, because I basically said look her up on Google. You might find her quite attractive.
I'm not even going to tell you what my response was to that because I'll get myself cancelled. But yeah.
But no, mate. I love my Witcher, so I'm always down to gush about that if you want. Yeah. So we go from Nick's charged, and he has like what you'd expect, the breakdown of God, she's done this to me, and if you weren't feeling sorry for this bloke, at this point, I don't know how you can't feel sorry for him at this point.
Yeah.
Because she's just absolutely ruined his life. And like I said, I think that all plays into the end of why she does what she does.
But again, she's still ain't happy at this point for him to take the fall. Always.
Yeah, and it's sort of, I think that is really showing her sort of how she's lowered herself and her morals have just completely gone out the window. That she's willing to. It would be bad enough if it was an innocent man she was doing this to, but
Yeah.
to be her partner and the father of her kids. And I think, like I said, she sort of explains this later. So
Yeah.
so now basically they've been looking at the AC-12 at all this footage, and they've narrowed it down to, it looks like woodland, like this massive area with no cameras. So they're like, right, that's going to take forever to search, and we don't have that time. And they're sort of all defeated, and they're going out of AC-12 after spending God knows how many hours, is the impression, on finding where she could have dumped this tracksuit. Oh, hi. Hello, Dean. So Steve, like I don't know what to call them. They're like Steve hunches. I'm trying to think of a good term.
Well, I was going to say, Eve Asms, but that wouldn't really go.
No, it's like they're almost like his little Sherlock moments. It sort of reminds me of that. He just sort of sees something or something clicks all of a sudden, and it's because he's going out, isn't he? And he has to ask for the doors to open because he's in his chair, and somehow, oh, that sounds worse. Zuku.
I actually enjoy that. That's actually my good. Actually, said that cool. Well done.
Okay,
You have a winner.
that's what Daniel can call them then. I'll just call them his little Sherlock moments. And he basically thinks about how, well, if you think about the time she would have had and how she thinks, she wouldn't have just randomly done it anywhere where she couldn't find it again in this wood or field. And he sort of thinks, no, it's going to be somewhere she can find it. So we need to look back through her cases. And if that area has been used to dump evidence previously, that might give us a bit of a smaller searching area. And that's what they want, isn't it, at the end of the day, to have. Oh, yes, she's very scary, Wendy. Like, different scary to Denton. Different scary, but yes, she's scary.
Or you do start I feel again because
Oh, he'll reminisce about his favourite character. So they have this hunch, and then they find basically all the stuff she dumped from Tim's flat. And there's a sort of a moment which I quite like, which is that she's home, isn't she? And she's a bit cocky. She's like, "Oh, it's done now. It's all resolved." The kids still ate her guts, but she's like, "Yeah, like I'll cook you tea," and she's trying to be back to being normal mum. And then they just come and arrest her, murder squad, and it's just like, oh, finally, you're gonna get your comeuppance. Is the feeling. I don't know how you felt when they arrested her.
Yeah, but she's kind of still sort of for about it.
Oh no, she still is, but it just felt like you sort of felt, no, this is something. Like I said, this is the biggest thing they've ever got on her. And like I said, it's sort of a nice little comeuppance that she's like, oh, I've done it, and then they're like, no, you haven't. But it's interesting that when she's in the building, she says, I'm only going to talk to AC-12. So you just think, oh, you have got a plan.
Yeah.
Because she also bumped into the lawyer, Jimmy.
Yeah. And how did he not know that he was going to get up because Roz is a bit of a psycho.
I just think they're good friends, and that sort of disguised him from thinking she might have alternate motives here. So she asked him to represent her, and you're just like, okay, something's not right here. And you're just sort of starting to think, oh, this is the finale. Like, stuff's gonna be dropped soon. Because this is how Line of Duty tends to do its finales. And then we get a pretty big scene of basically her interview. And it's just sort of, here's evidence, 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 isn't it? That links you to Tim.
Yeah.
It doesn't just link you, basically tells us you killed him.
Yeah.
And at first she's very like, no comment, isn't she? She's sort of being that usual stoic sort of Roz we've seen. And you can I don't know if you sensed it, you can sense an almost like giddiness in Hastings.
Yeah, because he kept powering on with the questions and evidence in the hope that he would have down, and eventually it does.
And then, of course, because she sort of in the last interview went after him and sort of called him out for the whole sexism stuff. So you get a sense, and this is Adrian's acting, that it's like, yeah, I'm really enjoying putting you down a few pegs.
Yeah.
Here, and then, and you can, and like I said, I think this is the start of really good acting actually from Thandi, if I've said her name right.
Yeah,
there is this sense of defeat about her almost, isn't there, this time?
And
you can just sort of see she's quite quiet, like I said, but there's something in her eyes that you can just sense. And I think this is the start of what Sudoku was saying, is that you're almost starting to see the real her in this scene. Sort of beyond all the lies and the backstabbing and the setting people up. It's like she is sort of just this quite vulnerable person, really, underneath it all. And then once I think Jimmy senses that he's not going to be able to do anything for her, she's sort of going to be done for whatever, he says, oh, I've got a conflict of interest because I represented her husband.
Because he starts to panic, so that's when he says that. No, you can tell his sort of facial expressions start to change as soon as he admits that.
Well, it's sort of interesting that he's sort of, I think it's more the evidence, isn't it? He's like, yeah, I can't do anything for her. He says that, and then she sort of is very quick then to come out with, oh, I confess I did it, but it was in self-defense.
Yeah.
And like I said, that sense of what I said before, which is sort of all the tricks, all the sort of trying to be smarter and trying to be tough almost attitude just goes. And you just see her honest sort of response. And she talks about how, yeah, I went there because I thought he was going to whistleblow on me. I had no intention to do anything more than talk. We sort of started fighting, it got out of hand. And this is Thandi's acting when she does talk about waking up and seeing him with the bone saw. And you do really get this sense of how scared she was.
Yeah, and so it's revealed she was able to take control of his phone and his other gadgets for the server basically.
Yeah, well, that's once, because she sort of says about how she woke up and then she was sort of fighting for her life. And in the struggle, the saw caught him in the neck. And as you can guess, the bone saw, that doesn't take, it only takes a little bit of a cut. I think they were real, Matthew. I think all the other stuff has been fake. I think this is the actual Roz.
Yeah.
Because she's realised how far she's fallen and what she's risking now with her family. And the fact that the one person she thought that would be in her corner, Hilton, has just left her. So I think she's fully just like, I've backed myself into a corner here. Thank you, Sean. So I backed myself into a corner. I don't know, how did you feel? Did you think they were real tears at this point?
I think at this point, yeah, I think at this point, yeah, because she, cause she knew she put her kids in a no in situation because she gives this each that kids are going to need the parent and whatnot. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
I think, like I said, she feels like she's been left. So she sort of says that I didn't mean to kill him, and he just like he would instantly die from that. But then she talks about getting interrupted by Hannah,
yeah,
and then, like you said, because of all the tech he had in the house, she could see her, and then she took the fingers, and I think it's quite a good bit of direction and acting when you can see her hand physically go over the top
yeah,
of the picture of the fingers. So it's like she's almost reliving it. She's almost back there. And you can see she really didn't want to do that. And it was just all like, God, 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 I need to get out of this the sort of fight or flight. I honestly think it was that you hear people talk about when you can do something in the moment, but then when you think back to it, it's like, I can't believe I did that. And it's the sort of the body making you almost do it.
yeah.
So then this is what we knew. This is what we were waiting for. And then I loved when she's like, I'm still a police officer, aren't I?
Yeah, that was actually quite smart because like Jimmy says before that he says I'll be recommending a pull yeah man so I'm telling me to like that trust me he was and he pats her on the shoulder and then she says that's what you said to and that's what you said to and like and that's when she asks if she's still a police officer so then and she polices him under her
Yeah. And this is when the telecom basically inquiry comes back. And I think this is quite a clever way to bring it back on what she was actually doing.
yeah because of it turns out that there's been 3 on our phones.
Yeah, she basically tracks phone calls around the time Steve got attacked. And she goes, yeah, my husband did phone you, but then you phoned a burner phone, which phoned another burner phone.
Yeah,
And it just, so you can quickly see that it wasn't Nick that told Balaclava bloke. It was Jimmy. Jimmy was the reason
yeah,
Steve got attacked. And I think it's also, it's a very quick shot, but Steve's face when she's starting to reveal all this,
yeah,
you can see, because he usually has quite a control, doesn't he, face an interview. He
yeah,
doesn't really give a lot away. And you can see this is obviously because it was him, and he's still dealing with not being able to walk. You can
yeah,
really see it's like, oh, okay, I. So I quite like that little bit of acting from Martin. But like I said,
yeah,
this is fully though Bandy's scene, and she's brilliant when she does it.
Yeah.
So once that all gets revealed, that basically Balaclava isn't just one person; it's a network, and that's what, as we sort of said at the beginning. This episode opens up a lot of stuff that we might have thought, oh, it's just one bloke, but it's like, no, it's a bigger picture. So she arrests Jimmy after she's been arrested, but they obviously have to keep them in AC-12
Yeah.
because, oh, sorry, no, I didn't put it in my notes. Basically, from the burner phones, they then link it to Hilton because the phone number he gave us like 3 or 4 episodes ago now, which is what she sort of said. I thought it was just for a hookup. Actually, it was like, no, it was a number connected to this burner network. So that then implicates Hilton.
Yeah.
So of course they go straight to Hilton to arrest him. And what do they find, Daniel?
They find he's on a runner.
Yep, and it's very like, of course he has. So while Hastings is doing that, Steve's been left in AC-12 with Jimmy and Roz. And they sort of have a nice little bit of a talk, don't they? Steve and Roz, when she's sort of like, well, I didn't mean it to get this far. And he's like, well, you should have stopped earlier then, shouldn't you then?
Yeah, because kids should have like arms and
I'd
can't
walk.
still be able to walk.
So I forgot, obviously going back to it now, there's some really good dialogue in this episode. That it's quite sort of snappy, but it gets to the point, and you can see him sort of with regret saying that. And that's what also why I think her reactions are genuine in the interview. You were seeing such regret now, and her sort of reflecting on all her actions, it feels like. And the sort of, was it worth the cost? What's Matthew said now? Yes, he was.
He's on form tonight.
He is. So yeah, we know. So then Jamie comes because Jamie's been sort of hanging around, and suddenly he's like, "Oh, I have to get Jimmy to an undisclosed location."
Yeah, but Hilton's been in his ear ever
Well,
since.
we don't know that, but basically the way Jamie's acting at this point, it's like, oh God, if you could give off any stronger dodgy vibes, it would be amazing. It's just like, and obviously Steve at this point knows Hilton's ran, so he's having to not show any of this in the room and be like, oh, okay, I'll just check with my gov. And he's sort of having to not show the panic of, God, oh no, Lee, that was my sister. I grew up with the songs, not because I actually liked them.
See, Charlotte actually has Charlotte actually has East, but move on.
Ooh, don't let some of our friends hear you say that. Yeah, so Jamie's trying to get the lawyer out, and as soon as he senses basically, oh, they know something's up, he gets his gun out and is basically using that to threaten everybody there. And you're sort of seeing Steve having to very calmly try and control the situation. And I think this is almost a bit of Steve proving that even if he's in the chair, he can still do what he could before. And then it's sort of him proving almost himself to himself. Oh, there's stuff that I could still get embarrassed about, Lee. Don't worry, it's just not steps.
Oh yeah, see this is why this whole live chat's the most awesome on you.
We love the randomness of our live chat. We really do. It's why we'll probably never like Daniel's pre-records are brilliant, but they're not the same because we don't get this.
Mhm.
So Jamie's like trying to get him out and the sort of Roz is saying to him, isn't she? Oh, Hilton's not gonna back you. He didn't back
Yeah,
me. Oh, of course you do, Noel. Hello, but of course you do. So he's sort of so yeah he's and they're trying to convince Jamie basically don't go through with this. You're ruining your life for Hilton. He's not gonna back you. And
yeah,
then at this point also there's also other Balaclava people that have appeared in AC-12, and Hastings gets a pretty good shot of one of them to prove he
yeah,
still can do that sort of stuff, even though he's the gaffer and he's a bit older.
yeah,
But it was a nice bit of stunt work as well. I think it was a nice bit of action because this was a bit of a low key episode, wasn't it, up until this
yeah,
point? And it was a
yeah.
needed bit of sort of action and a bit of more tense.
And it's almost it's almost a very very slow, but I'm not up until this point. I thought.
Yeah, it's sort of like I said, it was a lot of detective work still for a finale and a lot of character stuff versus we've added some more action. Obviously, last series we had the dock chase and the sort of massive action scene that was. So this was a little bit different. So I think it was needed to get this sort of face off with Jamie. And like I said, I think it was a bit of Steve having to prove himself almost again.
Mhm,
So he manages to talk Jamie down with the gun. So and Roz also helps a little bit. So
mhm,
they sort of get the lawyer into prison. But then
yeah.
next morning, what do they find?
Oh yeah, you find that Houghton's head because they go, because they go to the but yeah, all of us Stephen's lied to the social worker was found to like who who we who we get told about in the last series.
Yeah, and it's sort of it's supposed to look like he did it himself. I won't say the word because of YouTube rules. Um,
Yeah,
but because of that and the location, Kate
yeah,
is basically like, no, this feels like they took him off the table. Basically, this sort of big network we've been hinting at, this sort
yeah,
of idea of there being lots of players and there's people above. And they sort of even say, don't they, like, even though he was the top of the police food chain,
yeah.
he was obviously lower in this sort of network.
Yeah, it was kind of like it was kind of like a heavy.
Yeah, so it's sort of he'd obviously been rumbled, so they thought, right, take him off the table. And then that's sort of like the main last scene, isn't it? Because oh no, well Hastings basically is back at AC-12 with Kate and Steve, and he basically
Mhm.
concludes that the whole H thing was Hilton. Sort of like we can put that case to bed now and we can leave it and we've done it. But as you might not know, folks, there's two more series of Line of Duty, so you
Yeah,
can guess that it isn't put to bed in the slightest.
no, yeah, yeah, and that, uh, and that's a creation with the location of the boat, which gets brought up probably are on in the very first episode of the next series, so you do get a resolution to that. in the first episode of the next series. So yeah,
Yeah, I think the
um,
only thing left is obviously when they do the little like closing scenes, and we see that Michael got
yeah,
released and he didn't get
mhm,
charged, and he's back with his nan. So that's a nice little sort of happy ending, almost you could
yeah.
argue, for his character.
So so well, guys, give me your ratings, um, and and I've for this episode, and we'll start with Charlotte. What you get
Uh,
having the episode?
so I did quite like it because it's been a while since I've watched it. So when I watched it again for the stream with notes, I did quite like it. I think it was a good slow burn because you could really see AC and all the other factors coming together, and you could really see finally it's these sort of stray bits of information that have been floating around were finally getting connected, which was satisfying. And I think it was because AC12 were at this point really they'd sort of been taken off the
Yeah,
case. You had the regulation notice on Hastings. So you got this sense of them really having to work, which was nice to see, really having to all
mhm,
pull together to do this. And I really did like the Roz interview near the end. The sort of all the shielding, all the barriers
yeah,
had gone, and it was nice to see her without any of that. Truly, to see that really deep down she was a sort of decent person. I'm not going to say good. I'll say she's a decent person, and
yeah,
she at least admitted to how all the damage she was causing to her family and Nick and the kids. And I like I said, that little shot burst of tension and action in the end did well. I do agree though, it was a little bit low key, so I think I'll give it a 9 because it was a little bit low key.
Skibby Ghost. When Matthew said Skibby Ghost, only tell. Um, so
Still
yeah,
gave it a 10 though.
uh, true. I'll probably give it like I'm not sure what to give. If I'm between a 6.5 and a 7 because basically there's a really sober on it points in the episode, and don't get me wrong, I like the cast was the cast gave some good performances, but in terms of a finale, the pacing was a bit slow in terms of a finale. So I think I might have to give this a 6.5 because of the pacing of it. Now.
Yeah, I think it's with the whole pacing and the sort of what you want in a finale, that varies
Mm-hmm.
very much. And I think I've naturally been the type that I can have a long sort of character, less tension thing.
Yeah,
But I'm not going to deny, like, and sort of Sudoku said it, it will be hard to top last season because that
yeah,
was such a good finale.
yeah.
So it's like I said, at least I appreciate also that they do sort of change things a bit and they don't always go for the same finales, which is nice.
Yeah, and like this episode has a purpose because everything's starting to come together, so it's not all bad from my side of it either, guys. It was just the pacing really is so was us one down for um um Ian, it's supposed to be a finale. Ian, usually a finale his or shows are a bit more are a bit better paced.
Yeah, and like I said, the other like series one was pretty tension, sort of high, a lot of things going on.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a problem, nerd. when you binge this, you sort of lose details.
yeah,
So Wendy, she gave it a 9 from what I saw, but Sudoku
yeah,
I think was quite similar to you with his score when I saw it. Let's see if I can find it.
yeah.
I'd maybe go for a safe 6.5 between 7 as an individual story, 6 as a finale to the season overall.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's fair enough because like in terms of in terms of the whole in terms of the four series we've reviewed so far the this the this series is probably the weakest
Oh, but you really didn't like the last series, the beginning of it.
Yeah, but like that is only is the first episode. I mean, in terms of an overall sort of thing. Because the whole but our other thing was kind of already figured out by episode 3. If you remember.
Yeah,
Like
I think maybe
the
this
series.
season it was a bit of a thinner overall story to fit the episode count
Yeah,
in comparison to other seasons. I need a
yeah,
series and stop saying seasons. So
yeah,
as you can tell, I heard the both so many times now it switches in my head. So as you
yeah.
can see, folks, we have done series 4 now. And when we next do our line of duty, it will be series 5. And a little preview. This is one of my favourite series of the whole lot of Line of Duty. So I hope you guys enjoy it like I have because I think this is a really good one, Series 5.
And to be honest, guys, I have actually seen the first episode because I usually watch the next episode just to get a feel for it, basically. And I didn't enjoy it though. Like, I think there was somewhere else style a stick. Yeah, again, it's about different in terms of the story and the angle that it comes from, but we'll get to that when it comes. So we'll kind of let you know in the next viewers because been putting out I've been putting out like a bit of content, so like we'll just have to wait to see when are ready to do I'm ready to do the next review because Charlotte will be on type for 40 and stuff like that. So do you want to give your a shout out, Charlotte?
Yeah,
As well?
so soon, I won't reveal when, but soon, Type 40 Live will be back on Thursdays. And as we sort of alluded to, there's news is now starting to actually happen and actually come out for Doctor Who, so we'll probably have a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
And recently, we obviously did our reaction stream on Type 42, the news of Shooty, and
yeah,
then obviously the other news of Ted and Donna's return. And hopefully, folks, I am going to order some new headphones over the weekend. So hopefully, with their
yeah.
own mic. So I've been having audio issues lately on Type 40. So hopefully, fingers crossed, getting the new headphones and microphone will stop that. and
Yeah,
it might make me a little bit clearer and louder.
yeah. But I actually thought you were okay. To be honest, there was a couple of skips in the beginning, but like I just said, though, it's probably due to you're not used to using it an iPad and that. So yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. But like I said, and I am ordering them, and hopefully they fix it.
So yeah, in terms of myself, I've put out a couple of I've put out a couple of Doctor Who related um records the past few is I gave my thoughts on the 60th anniversary special announcements, and I also gave my and I also gave my thoughts on the 14th Doctor casting. So if you wouldn't mind checking those out, they are already up in the channel. Thanks to everybody that supported to the videos, especially the 14th Doctor casting, because as I've said to Charlotte, I mean I've actually had people like come to me privately and trying like the and and trying like roll me off the scent of the series, and I was also getting sick of people that had valid concerns as well that got attacked. I mean, even though I have the opinion that um even though have the opinion that I think the next series will be pretty good. I don't want my channel to become an echo chamber. So if you've got any comments about the 14th Doctor or the 60th special, please leave them down in the comment section below, and I will try and answer them the best I can. Also, as I'll be on the third zone with all on um um on us so cheers for the invite, and just to let me know what it is that we want to talk about, and what is emails, and I'll be available for that. So if you haven't subscribed to the third, if you haven't subscribed to the third zone, if you haven't subscribed to the third zone official YouTube channel, what you all actually of us rumor or speculation as all sorts of Doctor Who content, and he gives his opinion on it, and he allows people to come on no matter what. side of the fandom, no matter what side of the fandom you are on, I think I think no would appreciate the support. But as I say, guys, try and be irrespectful of others, because it's becoming a load of bullshit at the moment in the Doctor Who fandom. Everybody's jumping down, everybody is throw at them, and so yeah, so maybe her eye and give other people's deals a watch before you make some horrible conclusions about
Yeah, and it's very much in the sense of we we still don't know a lot, and we've just are reacting to the headline stuff we know about. So I would always encourage people to, if you're doubtful, that's completely brilliant. Okay, like there's nothing wrong with that. If you're excited, like I know and I've sort of shown on a couple of streams, I'm still quite excited for it. But they're both completely valid, and there's nothing wrong with being one or the other. So it's very much just listen, like Daniel said, to whichever side with respect. You can still have your own opinions, but you can always listen. And I just think we need to maybe just see what happens a little bit. Don't write it off yet until we've seen it, and just see what happens with the future.
Yeah. So guys, make sure to hit the thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe. Check out the previous content if you're still to do so. You can catch Charlotte and Type 40 or whenever she's back on here. You can also catch Charlotte on the third soon as well, as I know she is on the air doing the watch alongs, but also giving her reaction to the various bits of rumor, speculation, and news as
And Daniel gets to
well.
get the enjoyment of listening to me react to Jodie's episodes, which
Yeah,
he's already said that's Antinui. He's really looking forward to, aren't you? More my reaction.
yeah, that's actually going to be pretty fun. I get the feeling in some it'll be in scary each mode for that special.
Yeah. Daniel's promise, though, for the enjoyment he's going to get out of me basically going probably crazy, is he's going to be my venting board on Messenger. That's the trade off.
Yeah. See
So,
the see the things I do for the skimming.
you're not watching it. I have to watch possibly 90 minutes.
But see, the thing about it is, see, the thing about it is, is trying to get me to watch it as well, because he thinks that RTE has written the last the last and it's a special or what.
Yeah, so what I said, folks, is if you really are tempted, watch it on YouTube. Like the 5 minute or whatever clip they upload.
Yeah, because if Charlotte finds out that I have watched the and she'll end up when she told me that a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, I will find ways. I will find ways.
Yeah, and yeah, and all said as well that is like people jump into the same jump into the conclusion or be walk without actually seeing any of the episodes of the content. And
Like we said, doubts, worries are completely normal. We always
yeah,
get this at the start of a new era, but let's not condemn it before we've seen it. It's just, I think that's what Noel's getting at, and I very much agree in that regard.
yeah, and the final point I would like to make as well is that character that was introduced was is actually Donna Noble's or
Well, it's not been confirmed.
yeah, but it's not a replacement for Billy Piper anyway, because remember the honor married to that guy Sean at the end of um at the end of time. So yeah, so that's my that's my eating who she is. Definitely she's definitely not a replacement for a paper. People need to just sit down and talk, as I said in my I should in my shooting out my 14th Doctor until stop jumping to the after conclusions.
Yeah. So, and the folks, we're always probably going to have our little talk about Doctor Who, because, like we said, there's been a lot of news. So, as you
Yeah,
can see, that was our little 10-minute of what we think of the current state of Doctor Who.
yeah. So make sure to keep an eye on the channel and make sure you're still subscribed because YouTube will like to scare me over.
Oh, and it is
Like
coming near the end of the
but
month, folks, and that's when
yeah.
YouTube tend to unsub people. So keep a watch out.
Mm-hmm. End the time part 3. Oh Jesus!
Don't get him started, Sean. Do not get. We'll be here for another hour.
Oh Jesus Christ! It's the whole I don't want to go off and like at that point,
Oh, you,
at that
Sean.
point of at that point, everybody was like that. It's time for you to regenerate. You'll be remembered. You don't have to
Yeah, but
stay
come
that
on,
long.
folks. We know they're gonna repeat that line at some point in the specials,
Oh
in the centenary. You know he's gonna say that again at some point.
yeah. Exactly, no, exactly in my thoughts as well. Right, guys. Before I get cancelled by some crazy
Tenant fangirls.
yeah w- just make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and with and yeah. If hopefully got our favourite show back from a Bill Evian. So yeah, guys,
Fingers crossed, folks.
so yeah, guys, just keep an eye out for the content on the channel, and thanks to everybody that showed up in the chat tonight and support it does, and we'll see you soon. Here's the channel. We'll cherry hard and enjoy your weekend.
Bye, everybody. Okay.